What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and are you ready to set some intentions for the week? We had a pretty busy week going on this week. A lot of Venus action going on, some Mercury action, some Mars, and then there's Big Papa. Big Papa's gonna be stationed retrograde. It's fine, but it's gonna be this. That is gonna be kind of a trickier one for Jupiter being. We'll talk about that all and more in a little bit. But if you're new to this channel, welcome. Again, my name is Justin. And one of the things that I do on this channel is talk about the weekly transits that are going on in the sky and how we can work with these energies, what ways that we can set these intentions to grow and to expand. So in this week, I'm going to be covering the week of October 3rd through the 9th. And let's go ahead and jump into this thing. Because on the 4th on a Venus day, the 4th of October, at about 10:04 a.m., and that's going to be Pacific time, Venus is going to be forming a trine with Saturn, who's retrograde right now. And this is going to be happening at 14 degrees and 7 minutes. Venus is in Scorpio and Saturn is in Pisces. And so you want to look when I'm mentioning these degrees and points to see if you have any planets or points around this placement to see if these transits are working with you a bit more personally. But when we're talking about the nature of a trine, let's start there. Trines are when the planets are 120 degrees apart, so they're in like elements. We're talking water, fire, earth, air, and they're Jupiterian nature. So there's this movement, there's this new beginnings that can start. There's just this flow that happens. Trines were considered the most beneficial aspects. And when we're talking about this, Venus is how we attract, how we magnetize, and Saturn is where we learn to endure, where there may be where we're needing to show a little more patience, show a bit more resourcefulness, and kind of work with the kind of limited resources potentially. But putting in that work, Saturn really does reward. And so I find with this, one thing to note, Venus is in her detriment in Scorpio. So maybe you've been feeling a lot of maybe some kind of deep emotions that are going on. You've been kind of attracting a lot of things that maybe you haven't wanted to. Let's say there's been with Mars being in Cancer, Mars being in Cancer, who's the dispositor of Venus. Maybe you've been feeling a lot of maybe frustration. Maybe there's been some depression. Maybe there's been some irritation, some fear, possibly even. And now I feel with this flow, with Saturn being in Pisces, this can be an opportunity for you to find some ways to move through those energies, to kind of move and attract some newer things that you're wanting for yourself. So if you've been feeling in this space, like how can I go from fear to courage? How can I go from this depression to happiness? And I feel like when we're working with that and putting in those different types of efforts, it kind of helps to manage the emotions a lot more. Because emotions I feel like when we're working with emotions, my son's in Cancer, so I'm working with them all the time. But when we're working with emotions can be very powerful indicators of what's going on internally, what's needing to be shifted. This is like, what is this feeling? Like, when you're paying attention to that, it's just like, how can I move through that? How can I alchemize this into something different with that Venus in Scorpio? Because just because she's in her detriment in Scorpio, that doesn't mean that Venus is useless. That just means that she has to be more intentional with what she's feeling and how she's feeling. And this may be something too. Maybe you've been dealing with a lot of people around you. Maybe you've been dealing with a lot of heavy energies. Maybe you're working in like the psychology space, or maybe you work in like healthcare. Maybe you're working where you're dealing with customer service, whatever this may be looking like, and you've needed to find a way to separate yourself so that you're not taking on so much. Because there can be a lot of energies, and when we're talking with water energies, water has a tendency it can be impressionable if it's not mindful of what's moving through the waters. So I find with this trine and with this Saturn energy, this can be a really great one for you to, again, kind of find some different breathing techniques, or maybe even any sort of like maybe some maybe art therapy, something to kind of help move it along. Maybe even like talking about this, journaling about this, maybe creating a voice memo, something to just kind of get some eyes on these more so kind of fixed emotions that you may be feeling during this time. So very nice thing that could potentially happen is to kind of help free up that emotional stuckness. Then let's get to Saturn Day. That's going to be the 5th of October. And at about 11:36 p.m., Mercury is going to be forming a square with Mars. And this is going to be happening at 17 degrees and 33 minutes. Mercury is in Libra and Mars is in Cancer. Now, I like when Mercury is in an air sign. Mercury naturally rules over Gemini, so Mercury knows how to navigate in this space. And Libra is the cardinal air sign. Their ruler is Venus. And so if you've been noticing that there have been a lot of, again, paying attention to the thoughts that have been coming through and where have you been speaking from? Have you been more reactive than normal with that Mars and Cancer energy? Pay attention to any sort of like frustrations that are coming through, because I find with Mars and Cancer, this is where he experiences his fall. And when planets are in fall, that just means there can be this tendency to fall into some of the lower vibrations of the planets. And when we're talking Mars, Mars is a fighter. Mars is always the one. Mars will be there for you. And in Cancer, where you may think that might make you feel good in the short term, they can have some very tough long-term ramifications or consequences if we're not being careful with that. And so this can be, again, where the squares are where the planets are 90 degrees apart. They're Martian, or Martian in nature. And they can bring about this tension, this frustration, and they call us to take some sort of action. And it usually happens when the planets are in like modalities. So we're talking cardinals, fixed, or mutable signs. And when we're talking with the two cardinal signs, Libra and Cancer, you want your thoughts and your emotions to be in line. This is a great time to get the head and the heart in alignment and understand where you're initiating from. And so let's say if you're noticing, like, let's say, for example, if you have like a spouse that has been maybe just kind of doing things that are getting on your nerves, instead of just like nitpicking and nagging, it's just like having a conversation. We could take a different action. It's just like, hey, I've been noticing I've been feeling a lot. There's a lot of water energy in the mix right now. We got Venus, Saturn, and Mars all in water signs. And we have a lot of air energy. We got the Sun, Venus, Jupiter all in air signs. So it's just like, hey, there's been a lot of energies going on with me and around. And I'm finding that there are these little things that seem to be adding up, and I know it's not you that I'm mad at, but it's like I feel like I'm wanting to take this out on you. And so it's like, can you help me out to, like finding more constructive ways to take actions? And you may find that you get more results when you come at it from a place of like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I'm not putting my stuff on you. You know what I mean? And I feel like that can, in kind, give you the response that you need. Because, yeah, like I just feel like this is just be careful where, or just be mindful where you're initiating from. This may not be the time with this Mars square Mercury to tell your boss off, or to tell that client off, or to tell a friend off, or tell anybody off for that matter. And I feel like this is not being, I remember talking with a friend about this, and where we were talking about like, oh, well, if you're bringing this, I'm just going to match your energy. And it's just like, no, let's try to rise above this energy. Let's try to be better, not necessarily stay in that vibration. And especially, if someone's trying to throw some, it's like, what kind of brush that? We're not just letting anybody treat us any which kind of way. That's something I feel like to be mindful of. And that's something else to talk about. But it's like, bring maybe that to their awareness, where it's just like, hey, I don't know what's going on with you, but you figure that out. There's this little funny magnet that I remember seeing that is just like, excuse me, train wreck, this isn't your station. So maybe finding like a nicer way to say that. But that's something. But I was just thinking with that, if you've been keeping your mouth shut about some things, maybe you've just been kind of taking stuff on just to keep the peace, that's going to add up. If you're letting people kind of walk all over you, if you're just kind of becoming a doormat, there is a way to be assertive without being destructive. And so I would see even being paying attention to where you may even be kind of just been biting your tongue maybe a little bit too much with this. And this could be a time where just like standing firm, because then people will respect that too. I actually just had a situation where someone was not necessarily coming at me, but came a little hotter than I think they realized. And so I was just like, oh, okay. You want to play word games. Let's do it. And I did it in a way that was, I could have had maybe a little bit more tact, but it got the point across. And then people like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I was a little bit out of line. My bad. And it's just like, ain't no thing. Just wanted to bring it to your awareness. Get a lot done with that. Now, let's talk about Mars Day, because a few days later, on the 8th of October, at about 3:21 a.m., Venus is going to be forming a trine with Mars. And this is going to be happening at 18 degrees and 38 minutes, Venus in Scorpio, Mars in Cancer. So again, this can be a time to pay attention to what you've been attracting, to where you've been kind of operating from, and to get more, to use the emotions more constructively. Because I feel that we're in a place where we're past that, like, this is not a time to stifle emotions, because if we bury things down, then nothing's being dealt with, because bet it'll come up again, and it's going to come up in a way that will catch you off guard if you've just been pushing it down, and it could potentially again blow up in a way that we didn't want to. So when we're talking with that trine energy, this can be a chance to, again, just to get some emotions moving, to get some places where we're just operating from a more constructive, proactive type of place. But we have to form this relationship with it first and understand why is it, get down to the source of why am I responding. So that fixed water energy with Scorpio, why am I responding so deeply to this? Is there something, get to the root cause of that emotion. Cancer is a cardinal water sign. They're where the feelings initiate from. And so this can be a really great time to redirect this. This could be great where if you have been feeling a lot of stuff, maybe doing some working out, possibly, maybe taking up a kickboxing class, or maybe even just getting into running on a outside, or running on a treadmill, or just maybe even just, if you don't feel like running, just pacing, getting the energy moving in some type of way. Again, some art would be really great with this. Maybe working with like watercolors even, but that's just something I feel like too. We're in a place, I feel, of just kind of correcting and getting into a different type, because there's a lot of trine energy that's going on this week. A lot of beneficial things that can potentially help bring about the support that you need and bring about the actions or the tools that you need in order to process a lot of this stuff, so that we're not magnetizing more of the same sort of like negative emotions or negative responses that we have when certain emotions are coming up for you. So yeah, really pay attention to where we're initiating this week is from that emotional space. And then too, a little bit later that day, a few hours, or like 2 hours later, at about 5:22 a.m., Mercury is going to be forming a trine with Big Papa. And this is going to be happening at 21 degrees and 20 minutes. Mercury is in Libra and Jupiter is in Gemini. And so now it's like we've moved through this kind of like emotional space. We've been observing our actions. And now we can adjust, where we have that Mercury Libra is initiating from a different place, and then it's developing newer tools and newer ways of expanding with Jupiter being in Gemini. So we're not just all over the place. You know what I mean? And just like, because there's a lot of information and a lot of communication, a lot of things going on with when Jupiter is in Gemini, because this is one of the signs where Jupiter finds his detriment in Gemini. And so I say that I feel like if you have been feeling, again, a little bit hot or anything along those lines, are there things maybe even online that is fueling that? Maybe you're picking up on more kind of collective energies that we're talking about when we're thinking about with Jupiter and Gemini. So that's something I feel like you can really kind of get eyes on some things, and now we're being more mindful. We're being way more mindful with this, and we're growing through this. I really like how this flow of energy could potentially get down, even despite what sort of like chaos or chaotic things may be kind of happening at this point in collectively even. Now, the bigger thing that I really kind of want to pay attention to, bring to your attention, is on Mercury Day, the 9th of October. Big Papa's going to be stationed in retrograde. And this is not anything to like panic or anything like that. It's just now Jupiter is getting ready to he's going backwards in kind of, he's reflecting on how have I been growing. Look at where you have Gemini in your house, whatever house system you're using, and see where this is going to be happening, because now we're in a place where we're seeing how have I been taking Jupiter's lessons, and how have I been growing, and has the growth been to my benefit, or has it been to my detriment? Have I just been taking stuff in and just been mindlessly growing? Because that's, I feel, with Jupiter being retrograde, where Jupiter will always give. Jupiter is always going to bring a sense of abundance. I find when he's retrograde, again, it's limited. As far as, and it's only limited by what we're viewing, by how much we've grown. Jupiter's expansion will always be there. But if we've not liked how this area of our chart has been growing, or how we've been showing up here recently, this can be a time to really okay, let me reevaluate what's been going on. Let me just pause and kind of just suss through, because Gemini has a way. I feel Jupiter is in detriment is because Jupiter loves to grow and Gemini loves to learn, and Gemini can learn really fast. It can pick up information like that. But it's just if it's just been just a lot of let's say maybe a lot of fear mongering, or if it's a lot of just negative talk, or a lot of negative things, and it's just it just keeps you distracted from your goal, from your process here. And so while Jupiter's doing because Jupiter will be retrograde from the 9th of October until February, till February 4th, 2025. So that's what, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. So we have about 4 months of good retrograde time. And Jupiter does this every year, where he takes a moment and it's just okay, let's backtrack. Do we want to continue this way going forward, or do we want to course correct? And I feel with Gemini, even though we may have picked up a lot of things really quickly, we can as easily discard a lot of things and just start from scratch. Okay, let's take what has worked, and then build on a newer foundation. Try to get things a bit more solid. So those are, and that's I feel is really would be a very kind of a general thing of the week. And again, look at to see where this is falling for you in your houses. That's going to show the area this is experiencing in, and see again if there are any points that are being activated by this. Because consider especially if you have stuff in the mutable signs, we're talking specifically, I would say Pisces and Virgo, and then Sagittarius, because that's where he's forming an opposition with. That's another area I would look with. Jupiter is going to be retrograding from 21 degrees in 20 minutes, and he'll be going back all the way to about 11 degrees in 16 minutes of Gemini. And if you have placements in Gemini, he's coming through to really kind of help you reevaluate some things. And but the lovely thing with Jupiter, and I love that we're ending on a Jupiter note, is that there's always going to be growth, and just continue to affirm yourself through this. Because Big Papa doesn't just bring abundance, he brings awareness, he brings wisdom. Because you can have all the gold and all the things in the world and not know what to do with it. So that's where I feel Jupiter is just kind of helping us with that, to make sure that we're making the most of our growth. So just some things to keep in mind this week. And I also want to include in here too, if you're wanting to work more intentionally with the lunar cycle, because on this one I don't really get into lunar shenanigans, but if you want to work with the moon and see what's going on with the lunar transits and things, down in the description box below, I have a link for my channel, The Chariot and Friends, where I do videos every time the moon changes into different signs. And this is specifically geared to and can be very beneficial for you if you have any Cancer in your placements, especially if you have it sun, moon, rising, but you could have it anywhere, Mars, wherever it's looking like. So if that's something that interests you, and I include some tarot readings, I include a tarot reading in there, that as well as some chart readings for the major lunations, the new moon first quarter, full moon and last quarter. So there's that for you. But until next time, keep raising that consciousness and that vibration through the roof. And Thought I had something else there for you, but that's it. And I will catch you on the next one. Mercury Day.